That's a good feeling, because people are in partnerships and in relationships and they need to not be. like, like seriously. I mean, so
No.
to be giving of your time and your space and it be with somebody who you feel like fits you well and you just get each other, I mean, like there's nothing more beautiful than that. So I'm glad for them. And I know that when people get married, they have no idea what they're getting into.
At all.
They have
At
no
all.
idea. You have no idea what you're really getting into for real. So to be at 10 years and to feel like, no, we made the right decision, like that feels good. I'm sure that
It
feels good.
does. It does. It does. What
Yeah.
about you?
Yeah. Ooh, so I think for me, what unconditional love means is like wanting and actively helping your partner pursue the things that they want, even if it doesn't include you. And I say that because it's always been like important for me that me and my husband both have, lives outside of each other, right? Wearing the motherhood hat, the fatherhood hat, you know, pursuing your own professional endeavors, being a friend, being a sibling, like all those hats it's a lot to manage. And, I'm often, I've made it very clear to him, like, it is important for me that we both have those things, that we need to have those things. I also think though that unconditional love also is like saying the thing that needs to be said in a
Mhm.
way that isn't brutal, in a way that is with care, right? I think that sometimes we definitely think that like being brutally honest, is like, you being real. And it's like when you love someone and you care for someone and you love someone unconditionally, you want to be honest with them, but you want to do it in a way that they're able to receive the message, right? If you truly want the message to be received, being brutal about it is not going to get you there, right?
Mhm.
And I'm not sure that I've always done that, right? I'm not sure that I've always been able to get the message across in a way that is with care and with love, right? And so I think, when you're exploring, your romantic relationship, it's definitely important that, and it's definitely been important for me, that, my husband has that he, has opportunities to, that we have opportunities to exist together where we, share, our experiences fully and that we can like really capitalize off of those moments and those memories. But I'm also like super excited when he gets to engage in something that is just for him, that is just
Mhm.
his thing. And I'm like, tell me about it. Like, was it fun? Like, what'd you do? Like, how did it feel? Like, I'm so excited when he gets to have that because I just think that, we definitely always talk about the mothers and how mothers lose themselves. And I'm not saying that fathers don't. I think socially fathers are not left with the same task of like being a parent, right? That we tend to like believe that women were just born to be nurturers and women were just born to like be good parents, and it's just not the case.
Mhm.
And I think that sometimes it's easy for fathers to lose themselves too. It's easy for fathers to like get so, and I will say this because like the kind of father that my husband is, like he is a hands-on dad, but that's what he learned. That's what he got to witness growing up, that while his dad worked and his dad was, a professional, his dad was also like a family man. He was like, he tells me stories about how like he like always waited for like his dad to get home from work, like him and Mercy, and they
Mhm.
would like pounce on him immediately, like as soon as he got in the door, like because they wanted him, right?
Mhm.
And so for me, because I know that's the kind of dad he is, there have been times when he has said, like, when Savon, like, wants to go to the playground, I'm tired. I just do it because that's the kind of dad that I had. Like, my dad would,
Mhm.
rain or shine, no matter what. Like, he was making sure that he spent time with us. And so it's really important for me that, like, you get to have, that life outside of us. And to me, that's what unconditional love is. But I think that because like it's so much pressure to be the sole provider and producer of your person's happiness, right? And that
Mhm.
I'm not powerful enough and strong enough to be able to like add so much to his happiness, and like he deserves to engage in other experiences that pour into that happiness, that kind of give him the happiness that he desires. Now, I'm not saying that you should forego your boundaries to support somebody and support the things that they want, right? Because I could see this being twisted into being like, oh, whatever your partner wants, you need to be, no,
Yeah.
I'm not saying that you need to be out here, ignoring the things that your non-negotiables, right? Because at the end of the day, like there is still a limit, right? But I
Yes.
do think that part of unconditional love is exploring how you are showing up as a partner and for your partner. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? And how are you reflecting on your ability to be a better partner in that
Mhm.
relationship? And I'm not sure that I have always been able and willing to do that. And I think much of that has been because of like perfectionism, right? Because when you have to own that, like, maybe I haven't been loving this person unconditionally. It if you're somebody who struggles with perfectionism, it's like that self-criticism, it's hard to like reframe that as like not a moment of criticism, but a moment or an opportunity to grow. You know what I mean? And for
Mhm.
a long time I really struggled to own moments where I wasn't showing up that way, where I wasn't really showing up, in a way that really promoted like unconditional love. And so what I will say about me now is that I am, I'm really, committed to that. I'm really committed to like, ignoring the part of me that feels like that's criticism, and really embracing the part of me that believes that it's just a moment for me to improve, the person that I'm really trying to be, you know what I mean, to my relationship, And so, again, I'm not sure that I've always been able to like, actively say like I want to help you get the things that you want out of life, even if that doesn't include me, because again, you don't know what's going to happen. You know what I mean? And
Mhm.
I hope that like this is the person that I'm really truly going to spend the rest of my life with. Like I really hope that that's the case, and I believe that that's the case. But again, you never know what happens, and so I still want those things for my spouse. I want him to be able to have a life where it's that he's lived a full life, and it's not just because he's been married to me. Like, I mean, I know I'm great, but I know that like, we deserve to have a life that is full. And it's not fair or feasible for me to be the person that's like adding to your life in all of those ways. I just don't have those superpowers, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And
Yeah.
life is just so it's so meaningful, and I just want him to be able to have all of what life has to offer, you know what I mean? And so for me, that's what unconditional love is.
I agree. Yeah, I definitely agree. And I think that that's important though. Like, although you want to be adding to your partner's, life, you also want your partner to be adding to their own life, right? Like we are in
Absolutely.
charge of our own happiness. And,
Mhm.
although we very care about our partners, we love our partners and we want to be with them, for the rest of our lives. Again, like you said, we never know what is going on. And, I also want to feel like my partner can come to me and we can have dialogue around if they aren't happy and
Mhm.
how we get them
True.
there because I
Yeah.
love my partner enough to want to figure that out, right? And the
Mhm.
same thing I want it to be reflective on me as well. Like I want my partner to love me enough to have those tough discussions because there's going to be times where we're hitting it, out the park and then times where we need to go back and do some work. And
Yeah.
if you're willing and open to doing personal work, I think that that's also part of unconditional love, right? Is having unconditional
Mhm.
love for yourself can then pour in and open that door to having unconditional love with your spouse. And having unconditional love for someone doesn't mean that you are, a doormat. Doesn't mean that you don't
Yeah.
have boundaries, healthy boundaries. That
Mhm.
is a part of unconditional love. But it is loving someone and saying like you're imperfect, I'm imperfect, we're walking through and we're growing, because we bring so many different experiences and, just paths that we're bringing into the relationship. We were someone before we got into the relationship. And I think that that's
Mhm.
important. People often forget that. And now we are bringing two individuals together and they have to figure out how they coexist. How do we then merge
Yeah.
those two paths into one? and what that's gonna look like. And
Mhm.
I can't sit there and say, like, I'm being like, your bags that you're bringing into this new path are invisible to me. In the same way, you can't do that. It's just not fair. So I think like
Right.
that's unconditional love, is to be accepting of those prior bags and being like, let's figure out, like, do we need to like repack this bag together? Like, do we need
Mhm.
to do a carry on, or are we checking this luggage? Like,
Right.
which one do we need to do? I think like having that dialogue is so important to continue healing and growing within your relationship. And,
Mhm.
just the ebbs and flows. Like I said, in our relationship, we've had a lot of tests, a lot
Mhm.
of tests that have
Yeah.
tested us individually and personally, but also as a couple. And, you know,
Mhm.
it's that's unconditional love, is wanting to see the other person happy, but also admitting
Mhm.
that there's limitations to just how much you can be in control of their happiness. And honestly, like you, I don't want to be in control. That's too much power. That is too much
Yeah.
of a burden to, like, I don't want to jump through hoops for anybody. Like, it's hard
Mhm.
enough being in control
Exactly.
of my own happiness. I don't want to add nobody
Right.
else to the load.
Right. Like for real. Yeah. For real. Life is already hard enough. I don't want the I don't want to say burden, but I don't want the like responsibility of being the person who's like responsible for your happiness. Like I don't want that. And I've you will hear older people say stuff like that. And I'm like, that ain't the kind of marriage that I want.
No,
I don't want that. I don't want that burden. I don't want that responsibility. I really believe that like marriage is truly what you two people decide you want
I
that
was just
that
about to
marriage for
say
you
that.
to be.
I was just
I
about
mean,
to say that.
yeah, I think too many times we are mimicking what we saw in our house or what we saw on TV or what
Mhm.
people say it should be, and it's truly about what do you two want and how are you two going to create that thing, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
Whatever that thing is, and there's no right or wrong way to do that, you know what I mean? Like, but
Exactly.
you have to both be committed to like what you're choosing. So
Yes. Both have equal parts and decide what
mhm.
works for you guys. It doesn't matter if it doesn't make sense to anyone else. Like I said, if you're not
Yeah.
harming, kids, animals, other people,
Right.
like,
Do
love it
you.
for you. Keep on,
Right.
because at the
Right.
end of the day, you guys are the ones who have to live with your choices and decisions. And, you know,
Mhm.
other people's relationships is not my relationships. And, you know,
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think that that's
Absolutely.
important.
Mhm.
So, we're going to go off of the next question. Explore the idea of growth within a partnership. How have you and your partner evolved together, and how has your relationship adapted to those changes?
Well, growth is great to me, right? I think it's great because, obviously the person that I was 12 years ago when I met my husband is not the person, thank God. I'm not the person that I was 12 years ago. And I think growth happens at every stage of your relationship, right? And it's different. I think growth has been different for the both of us. We went from enjoying moments of like being the two of us and being able to travel and do all the things that we want to do to getting engaged and like that, part of our relationship and getting married and then relocating and then deciding to have our son. I definitely think that there was so much growth in that. I will say, not only is growth good in terms of like just the things you're able to accomplish, but like growth in mentality and growth in mindset, right?
Mhm.
And I definitely think that the both of us have grown in mentality and in mindset. I know that the biggest challenge for me, or the biggest moments of change for me, came when we had our son.
Mhm.
And I think I lived my life, and I mentioned this earlier, but I lived my life very low maintenance, right? Not expecting much from people, not asking much of people, being a low maintenance friend and partner and daughter and sister, like just and what that meant to me was like, I don't require much. You know what I mean? I don't need much. I'm good. You know what I mean? And I'm also willing and able to be available to everybody else and to manage everybody else's needs and wants, right? and make those things a priority, but not make my wants and my needs a priority. And I think much of that was just, again, going back to just being a people pleaser and not having an understanding of what it truly means to know yourself and know what you want and know what you desire and know what you need. And the second half of that, though, is like being able to express that to people. And I think my biggest fear was always like, are my wants and my needs and my desires going to be seen as too much? Are they going to be seen as unrealistic? Are they going to be seen as, is it going to be something that people are not going to be willing to do? Because the thing is, and what I've always been afraid of is like, and this goes back to my abandonment and rejection issues, is like, when you put that out there and people decide they don't want to do it, then what do?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you gotta either be willing to bust a move or what? You know what I mean? Like, I think that's always been my biggest fear, is like, if I put these things out here, what, and are people going to love me enough or want me around enough to say, okay, this may not be what I want to do, but this person is valuable to me. This person is, meaningful to me. And it's not that I never thought that I was valuable or meaningful, but I do think that when you have a history of abandonment and rejection, that is what you subconsciously, that is the fear. That is the reason why you don't, you don't want to share those things with people. That is why, because, you know what I mean? If people decide to leave, then it's like, okay, well, I was right. You know what I mean? I'm not valuable. I'm not, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
I'm not lovable. I'm not, I don't have what it takes for people to stick around, And so I will say that the challenge, though, that I had to realize was that I was the biggest culprit of that. You know what I mean? I was the biggest culprit of not, valuing my own wants and my own needs, right? That I was wanting other people to value me and to, value my needs and value the things that I desire, but I was ignoring those same things that I wanted. I was ignoring them by not speaking them to people, but I was ignoring them by not speaking them to myself. You know what I mean? And people treat you the way you treat you. You know what I mean? And if you're ignoring that, and I don't know what it was about having my son, but there was just something about having him that was like, something has to change. Like, something has to change. You know what I mean? You can't keep living like this, And so I remember, believing that, like, once we had my son, like, again, things change, right? Your body is no longer yours. You're breastfeeding. The kid is biting on your titty. Like, it's a lot. You know what I mean? And I realized that, like, it was, nothing can prepare you for having a kid, right? Nothing. Like, the nurses can't prepare you for the breastfeeding. Your mom can't prepare you for the sleepless night. Like, nothing can prepare you for that. And what I will say is, I think what it taught me was, you can't keep going through life being low maintenance, because you actually do need support. You actually do need people to know how you feel. You actually do need people to be able to show up for you. You know what I mean? And if you are more committed to going it alone and like figuring it the fuck out without telling people, you're gonna crash and burn. You know what I mean? And it reminds me of this. I've seen this clip of Brene Brown talking about this very thing, like, about, like, people not showing up for themselves and people going it alone, and like this quote unquote midlife crisis that people go through, when it's not really a midlife crisis. It's like, it is, a shock to your system that's like telling you, like, you about to fucking crash. Like, you cannot keep doing this. You know what I mean? And so I remember, like, saying to my husband when Savon was like 9 months, that, like, we have to be intentional, and we have to be, willing to, like, figure out how we're going to balance being parents and having him. And to his credit, he was always like, it's not going to be a problem, because, again, he's the kind of person, he doesn't overthink it. You know what I mean? It's like, it's not going to be an issue, because I'm not going to let it be an issue, because that's not what I want. And while I believe him, and I believe that he never wanted that to be our situation, I'm a firm believer that if you don't make those things intentional, it will happen. You know what I mean? And not because you want it to, but because that's just how life operates. You know what I mean? That you got work, I got work, we got to get him from point A to point B. We got our own other stuff going on, and it's very easy to not, continue to water your relationship. And so I think that, he definitely wanted things to be fine. And I know he wanted things to be fine, but I just wanted to make sure that we prioritized it. So, in terms of our growth, I think that we've done really good at just being intentional, right? So when it's time for there are some parents who are like, they get really freaked out when they're, to leave their kid anywhere or like to have those moments. And I'm like, no, he gonna go and
See you later.
we gonna have a good time. You know what I mean? Like, and I don't even and not no judgment because I get it. I get that like it's depending on every kid is different. You know what I mean? And so that is definitely going to challenge you in terms of like your creativity and your strategy around keeping your commitment to your relationship. And like I said, like while I think my husband was always committed to that, again, that's where I am like good. I am good at saying, okay, we need to be intentional. So I know you want this, but like, how are we going to do it? Because, wanting something is not enough. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so I think that, I've definitely probably taken the lead in terms of like making sure that we, you know, just putting that out there, putting it out there that like I'm not saying that this is going to happen, but I just want us to stay ahead of it. That's the planner in me, right? To stay ahead of what could happen. And so I think that's what that's what I think what we've evolved into, right? Is like having this family, having our son, having our own life. But like one of the things that he's taught me is like that is more important than a job. I think I might have said this in one of our other podcast episodes that like he's always been like a job, like I don't care about that. Like I want to be at home with my family, with my son, with you, I want to kick it with our friends. Like that is like what drives him. And I think I wasn't always like that. I was always like this, like, my profession is important. And not that my family was not, but you get comfortable with like thinking and believing that those people are going to always be there. And that's just not the case.
Yeah.
And so how we've grown is like prioritizing those things and making sure that we're prioritizing our relationship. So what about you?
I would say like, me and my husband have grown individually, and we've grown together. Like I said before, when me and my husband first got together, he was not someone who would talk about his feelings. And I'm someone who, like I said, if there's an elephant in the room, we ain't walking around and acting like there ain't no elephant. I'm be like, there's a damn elephant in the room. Like,
you don't see the
it does
elephant?
not belong here. So like, let's figure out how we get it out, right? And so obviously those are two different approaches to how you deal with conflict, right? How you deal with issues. And so where I was very direct, he was not. And I'm also someone who's very goal oriented, and he is too, but I'm also someone who's like, you make a plan, you figure it out. Like, if there's not a door, I'm building a door. Like, I'm someone who I don't accept no's. Like, if my mind is made up, if I want something, I'm going after it and I'm going to see it through, no matter what that path looks like. And, my husband was someone who he is, very determined, but he also was like, if life is good, life is going good. I'm not over here trying to make, ruffles and, cause anything. Like, he likes things that are like concrete and, a routine. And I'm more so like, let's shake it up. If it ain't, I like to tell him all the time, like, even with our furniture, like to move things around just to make it fun, like that's just me. And so I think like we had to grow to understand where each other was coming from, what personal experiences we had prior to our relationship, and then how we could make that make sense within our relationship. I am someone who I have my core group of friends and, my core people that I am very invested in. And I'm not like someone who's just open to everyone. Like that's just not me. I'm friendly, like, but I'm just not someone who's going to tell you my deep dark secret if you're not someone who I feel like is in my close knit circle.
Yeah.
My husband, he's like that too, but he gives off the illusion of being like that. He's cool with everybody, and
Mhm.
everybody feels like, he's just this nice guy, and he doesn't say anything. He's like a man of little words. And I'm just like, that is not who he is, like at all. And
Mercy got these people
sometimes,
food.
fooled completely. But, even trying to learn through that of, because I'm so outspoken with things and he's not or he wasn't, people viewing us differently, viewing him
Mhm.
like the nicer one and me as the more combative one. And so, having to find that balance of wanting him to speak up more and him wanting me to speak less,
Right.
him wanting
Yeah.
me to, get a better control over my emotions, when again, I know we talk about trauma a lot, but I think that it's really important because it paints a full picture of individuals.
Mhm.
And when
Yeah.
you have, prior trauma experiences, I am a fighter, I'm used to having to fight for myself. And so
Mhm.
sometimes what would happen is that the inner child Deveron would be responsive to situations that really did not cause for her to be present, nor have a mouth or something to say. Um,
Right.
and not really handling things the proper way. She's gonna go
Mhm.
from 1 to 1,000, and sometimes
Yeah.
it's like, we were at a 10. Like, why are you at
Right.
1,000, right? So I
Right.
think, like, that's also something that we had to learn about each other is, my husband, he responds, but he normally responds in a calming way. Like, takes a lot to get him to be out of his element and,
Yeah.
to respond in a way that you'd be like, what the heck? It didn't used to
Mhm.
take me long to respond in that manner. Like, I was with the shit. Whether it be with my sisters, my mom, my mouth was reckless. Like I said, the inner child Devron would often show up and I would just let her loose. And
Show up and show out.
Mercy, girl, and Mercy would be over there like, did you really have to say that? Like, did you really have to take it there? Like, I
Right.
understand you're frustrated, but did you really have to go, did you have to clear the board? So I think, like, us learning each other of what we were bringing to the relationship prior, why we reacted to certain things, you know, what other people like what each other's triggers are.
Mhm.
One of the things he learned quickly about me was my tolerance level. I have
Mm.
different tolerance levels, and Mercy is very family oriented. I'm family oriented, but in a different way. I have boundaries. And not saying he doesn't have boundaries, but like for my family with the chaos, you gotta have, like,
Mhm.
even more strict boundaries. Like, I would have
You
a
do.
time limit that I could be around my family without them having the inner child Devron come out and say hello. So I
Mhm.
would have to
Right.
know, like, we getting to that point where she's knocking on the door, and I don't think I'm have to like open it in a moment. She might just come through. So like
Mhm.
we had to learn that about each other. Like, why are you so, and he used to tell me, like, why are you so quick to react to your sisters or your
Mhm.
mom? And so I think, like, growing in that and growing of, we had these prior experiences before we got together. How did those prior experiences impact us? Who are we fully? What are parts of ourselves that we want to change and address? What's parts of us that are not really aligning with where we see we're at right now and where we see we're going?
Yeah.
And I think, like, that was really important, and it was really important for us to do the work.
Mhm.
We've been to couples counseling was one of the things that, I definitely recommend, especially after my mom passed and then us becoming parents and, just all the different changes that happened in our lives. And I think that that really helped us to continue to be reflective of the changes within us, but also
Mhm.
being reflective of, like, we are still walking down a path, like, and there are going to be hurdles, there are going to be challenges, there are things that we can't even predict will take place. And like, we have
Mhm.
to continuously check in with each other and check in with ourselves to see how we are feeling, how we're dealing with it, and then just continue to do the work. Like, I think one of the biggest illusions that so many people convince themselves into believing is that once you get married, like, you guys are married and like you together. And it's like,
It's so silly.
no, like, that's just another chapter in your book of being together. Like, you guys have to constantly do the work. And as soon as you become complacent is when disaster strikes. And that's when you could be hit with something that could literally dissolve your relationship because you guys
Yeah.
became complacent and you didn't realize that before you were a partner, you are an individual. And like, you have to be
Mhm.
feeding yourself while also feeding your partnership and growing together. And that's something that I think we constantly are reflective of feeding ourselves and then feeding our relationship. And my husband knows I'm very goal oriented. I literally will come up with a plan. I'm kind of like Herb in that sense. I mean, I'm still a planner, but I will literally be like, Mercy, this I was going down a rabbit hole the other day and I thought that this
And
might
this is
be a
what I
good idea.
decided.
And
Right.
what do you think about this? And he'd be looking at me like, why were you even thinking about that? But maybe we could. Like, I don't know. I'm kind of okay with that. So I just
Yeah.
think like it's just constantly like being reflective of where you're at, being reflective of the road that you have taken prior to getting to that place. And then
Mhm.
just like figuring out, how does this look for us both? How does it look
Mhm.
individually for us? And then how does it look for us as a couple? And I think like
Yeah.
that is change and important. And the other thing is like growth is so important. Like, I want to be growing daily and I
Mhm.
want to grow individually, but I also want to grow with my partner. I want him to grow.
Mhm.
I want
Right.
to know what your goals and your dreams are, and I want to figure out how we can get you to those goals and dreams.
Mhm.
The same way that he's supportive of me, I'm supportive of him,
Right.
whatever he wants. And we teach that to the kids too. If you tell us that you want to do something, we're going to let you know what that path is going to look like, and you're going to start taking action to make it happen. So I just feel
Mhm.
like growth is so important for everyone. If you're not
Yeah.
growing, you're not living, right? and
Absolutely.
and you definitely want to do that. And I feel like that's something that is reflective in our relationship and something that works for us. Is like focusing individually, but also bringing that together and merging it into who we are as a couple. And like you said,
Mhm.
I'm really realistic, and so is he, that we're individuals before we are partners. And, you
Yeah.
know, I want him to grow and do his own internal work. And he wants me to do the same way, because if I'm not feeding myself, I'm not going to be a great partner for him if I'm not happy with
Mhm.
myself in the same way. Like, Mercy is miserable. Yeah, damn sure everybody in the household is gonna be miserable because he done brought
Right.
them bad vibes into the household. And the same thing with me. If
Right.
if things are off with
Mhm.
me, Mercy will be like, "You got the whole house in chaos. You like walking around." He told me that one day it was like some cartoon the kids was watching, and it was like the girl was like a tornado or something like that. Like, she was in a bad mood. And he was like, sometimes that's how you be. Like, he was like, you literally just be walking around in a tornado. And he'd be like, you like, here come Hurricane Deveron. Like, just be messing up stuff. Like, just, chaotic. And like
He's
that
silly.
just like serves a reminder to me of like, if I'm not doing the work on myself, like it does spiral out to impact my environment and the people in my
Right.
environment. So, we
Yeah.
want to be growing within that.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right. The next question is, can you delve into a specific instance where communication breakdowns led to misunderstandings in your relationship? What strategies have you since implemented to improve your communication and understanding?
So this is funny because I Mercy, when he hear this podcast, he'll be like, really? So let me tell you. So this is one
He said,
situation.
girl, what had happened was
So I told you about the fertility treatments, right? It was
Mhm.
costly. And at the
Oh
time,
Lord.
Mercy had decided, or he had been invited to a wedding, right?
Mhm.
Meanwhile, we're in the middle of fertility treatments, and anyone who's done fertility treatments, you have certain times that you have to do. So like if they say I had to do blood work, I want to say you start doing blood work like every other day, and then at some point in time you do it daily because they want to see if you're like what your timeline is, if you're ovulating, things like that. And then when they find out that you're ovulating and getting ready to ovulate, your time is no longer your own. Like they could call you into the office to do the procedure, like, and you've paid a lot of money at this point, so you're going to listen to them.
Mm-hmm.
So Mercy had decided while we're engaging in infertility treatment that he wants to go to this wedding, and it was out of the country. Okay. I done told you
Okay.
already that 1, it was costly, 2, the procedures were painful, and 3, I'm literally getting stabbed with needles to check my blood, and I have to jump when they say jump. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, and like I said, we were spending a lot of money on this. So he out the blue says he wants to go to this wedding, and it's out of the country, and there's literally not a lot of notice. And I'm looking at him like I probably could have like just poked holes with my eyes at him. And I'm like, are you serious right now? Like, not only am I going through all this painful stuff, like you're literally thinking about going out of the country in the middle of us doing fertility treatments. Like, at some point in time, you have to choose like what's more important to you. Now,
Mm-hmm.
as I said before, sometimes inner child Deveron's delivery is not the same way that grown adult Deveron will deliver that message.
Yeah.
So, did I say it in that manner? No. Did I say it in a manner that was not able to be received? Yes.
I'm sure.
Did I get my point across? Hell yeah. But could I have said it in a much better way so that he could understand what was driving those different emotions? Of course.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
the way I delivered it was not great. He immediately got defensive because of
Of
how
course.
I
Yeah.
delivered
Yeah.
the information. And we had a big blowout argument. Like, you know, I wasn't supportive of him. I didn't want him to hang out with his friends and all this other stuff,
Mm-hmm.
which was far from true because I love his
Right.
friends. If it had been any other time, I'd have been like, please go have a great time, take pictures, whatever. I don't care. That's
Yeah.
not who I am. But at the time, I was just like, come on now, like common sense, right? But
Mm-hmm.
common sense is not what my fears and everything that was going into it, you know, having the prior miscarriage, just the time, the energy, the money we were investing. I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't talking to him to be reflective of that. I was just coming
Yeah.
out like I was going to bite his head off because why do you not understand that this is important? Why do I even have to explain this to you, right? But I
Yeah.
also wasn't thinking like, I wasn't telling him how painful these procedures were. I wasn't. Like,
Yeah.
I wasn't telling him because a lot of times with our work schedule, he couldn't go to the appointments. And I was fine with that because we needed the money to do the procedure. So I wanted him to work,
Right.
you know, and so my schedule was a little bit more flexible. So I was able to go to a lot of the procedures on my own. I wasn't telling him
Mm-hmm.
those things because honestly, if I would have told him half of the things that I was going through, he
He
probably
probably
would have
wouldn't
said,
want you to
like,
do it.
we don't have to do this. Like, you know,
Yeah.
and I knew I wanted it, so I wasn't telling him. So here again, I'm getting mad about something that I haven't even communicated to my spouse, right?
Yeah.
And it wasn't fair to him. And I'm wanting him to fill in the blanks of why I feel like this was a dumb thing, right? For him to
Right.
not understand. But it's like he doesn't even have all the pieces to the puzzle, and I'm mad at him because he can't put the puzzle together. He doesn't even know
Mm.
what the pieces are, right? And some of the pieces are
Or
missing
that
for
they're
him.
missing. Right.
Yeah, and I'm over here like, what do you
Yeah.
mean you can't put it together? Like, it's common sense, you know? And so again, that type of misunderstanding led to us just butting heads, you know,
Mm-hmm.
him being like, you know, I wasn't supportive. I was just trying to like find issues and things that I never told him were an issue. And then I was mad because I felt like I wasn't being seen and he wasn't fully invested in this journey, right? And he wasn't
Mm-hmm.
fully invested in me of what I was going through, you know, the hardships that I was going through. And really it was that we just weren't communicating. Like we were not both
Yeah.
talking to each other in a manner that we could actually hear each other And really that was the whole issue of the argument, was that we both wanted things and we felt like the other person was not fully seeing us. We were not fully hearing each other, and we felt like our needs were going unmet,
Yeah.
which was our own fault, right? Like we
Mhm.
both played a part in that. So
Yeah.
I will say, like, that was definitely a lesson that taught us, like, you have to figure out, one, you have to deliver information in a way that the other person is open to hearing it, and not
Yeah.
so that they become so defensive right away that you literally could be like the lady off of Charlie Brown, the teacher that's like, want, 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 want.
Want,
Like,
want, want,
they
want,
don't hear
right.
anything. And then the other thing is, like, if you keep things from your partner, how are they going to be able to understand fully of what the situation is, because you haven't shown them the full picture, right? And
Mhm.
you can't make decisions that way. So
Right.
that definitely was a lesson. But like I said, I was mad. And we
Of
we was mad
course.
at each
Yeah.
other. You know,
Yeah.
it was not
And
good.
I think if we're fair, right, like you said, neither one of us were really fully expressing what we were going through, right? And so, and the thing is, you need those situations to happen so you can do better, right? Like, had this not happened, how would you all have decided to figure out the communication piece,
Yeah. And now the other thing was, I also found out that he hadn't shared with his friends that he was going through fertility treatments, you know?
Mhm.
And that was another discussion that we have of, I was very open and honest with my friends for support, and I was like, it's so important when you're going through something like this that you have some type of outlet, right? Like, you never
Right.
know. And I think he was actually able to talk to one of his friends who confided in him that he also had went through fertility treatments with his spouse, and so he understood what was going
Mhm.
on. And even the
Yeah.
person whose wedding was understanding. Like, of course he wanted my husband there, but
Yeah.
he was like understanding. So I think that also taught him, like, you can't carry everything on your own. Like, you need to utilize your supports, and not try
Mhm.
to keep everything, internal. So
Right.
we both learned, some valuable ways of communicating better, and just making sure that our needs are met, but also,
Mhm.
you know, being vocal about what those needs are to each other, to ourselves, but also to our friends who support us in our actual relationship. You need external people to support your relationship, because the
Mhm.
last thing that could happen, or the worst thing that could happen, is that now your friend's looking at me crazy, like I'm some controlling wife who doesn't want their friend to be a part of their life. And then they start bad mouthing me or putting you in situations that now challenge or possibly could damage our relationship, right? Because they have this
Right.
idea of me, because again, they're missing important key ingredients to fully know
Yeah.
what's going on. So I feel like it was
Right.
just across the
True.
board, like, we just need to do a better job of, like, communicating what our wants and needs are, and how to
Right.
better serve each other, but also ourselves.
Mhm. Right. Yeah.
What
I
about
would
you?
say I will say for us, I think that the breakdown has been just not having clear rules on fighting fair. For a long time, we did not fight fair. And not that there was lots of fights, not that there was lots of like arguing or disagreements, but I think that, like, what I mean by fighting fair is, like, I think that oftentimes when you're in an argument or a disagreement, the gloves are off, right? And you say whatever, you say however you need to say it, when say whatever, like whatever comes to mind. And I think, and to be fair, I never learned how to fight fair. Like, part of it was that. And I think that if I think I know what I know, I think that that's also probably true for him too, right? That the gloves are off, right?
Mhm.
Like, when we're in a disagreement or we're having a conversation that turns into an argument, you just say whatever, right? Or and I would say we both have been guilty of that, but most of mine is like reacting to things that to things that are being said, and then like shutting down or stonewalling, right? Like, just not even, I'm just checked out, right? I think, if I'm being honest, like, we both have probably had moments of all three of those things, right? And so I think I just think that it's important to be honest about what are the rules when we are having these conversations. Because I'm a big proponent of like the way I'm the way I'm spoken to. I'm not like I'm not like this prissy little girl, but like I just feel that there is a way to speak to people, and if you actually want something to get done or you want to express something in particular to somebody, being brutal about it is not going to get you what you want, especially not with me, because I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to do the opposite deliberately. Like that's, and I'm not saying that that's good, but I'm saying that that's how I operate. Like I'm
Mhm.
willing to compromise. I'm willing to meet you in the middle. Like, and this is not even just in my relationship, this is with anybody. Like I'm willing to do that, but if you speak to me in a way that I think is nasty, I'm gonna do the opposite. Like I can promise you that. And so I will also say that like a huge challenge for me too when it comes to communication is like, and again, this is not even just in my marriage, but in general, like if I have a disagreement or there's some kind of breakdown, I'm a big overthinker. I'm a big ruminator. I will like pick apart and piece apart every aspect of the disagreement and trying to decide, oh, I said this or they said this, and this is like I obsess about
Mhm.
that type of shit, and that's not good for me, and that's why rules are important, because
Mhm.
that's it's not good for me. I can definitely have a lot of emotional distress around stuff like that, and so the obsessing is not good for me, and it generally does happen when there's an argument or a disagreement. So having rules definitely has helped, and the rules can be whatever you want them to be, right? They don't have to be, I mean, again, you get to decide. When I say that you get to decide what your relationship looks like, what your marriage looks like, you get to decide what the rules of engagement are when you are, having a conversation, having a breakdown. So whether that means, we need to use I statements,
Mhm.
so that we can focus on how we feel versus saying you always, you never, because that creates defensiveness, right? Whether we decide, that we're going to make sure that we tap out if we need a minute, if we need to take a break, because sometimes this can be overwhelming, that we give each other that space, that we're mindful of our body language, like whatever you decide that your rules are, that's what those rules are, and those rules really help to guide the conversation. And this is not to say that you're always going to get it right, because you're not perfect, and I know that we've gotten it wrong, right? But I truly do think that and I will say this, I'm thoughtful about the things that I say, almost too thoughtful, which is probably a challenge. My husband is not so much. Y'all, you know him, right? You know him. You know that that he ain't always the person with the most tact,
No.
right? That he can be brutal sometimes, and it's not personal, because he's like that with everybody,
Everybody.
right? I
Anybody
think
can
that
get
that is
it.
yes, that is who he is. And I think for me, that is something that I've been very like, okay, I get that that's been acceptable, and that's you know it's not acceptable though in this dynamic, right? We need to find a way that we can communicate. And I'm not saying that I am thoughtful, but I can definitely shut down.
Mhm.
And there have been times when like you get in the silent treatment. That's not cool either. You know what I mean? Like it's just, again, because you know it's not cool, because at the end of the day, whether you're speaking brutally or you're not speaking at all, you're still not getting closer to a resolution, right? And
Exactly.
so and so that's the thing that we have had to come to, is like how to, and again, this is practice, because I've not learned these skills. I've not learned how to like express myself in a way that is meaningful, and that I'm not shutting down, and that I'm not waiting a month or two or 10 to finally tell you how I feel, because sometimes that's part of the breakdown in communication too, is that you've let things go and you haven't been vocal or honest about how you've been feeling, and then like the straw that broke the camel's back, and like now you getting 10 months of like shit that I've already been feeling and thinking, right?
Yeah.
And so it's just been a reminder for me and again, this kind of goes back to being a people pleaser, like not wanting to express or communicate my discomfort, my challenges, my wants, my needs, or being dissatisfied with something that you've done, because what does that mean? Are you going to leave? Are you going to are you going to think this is too much? Are you going to think that I'm asking for too much? Or I'm being unreasonable? Like, there's been so much of that. And I think within like the last probably year and a half, 2 years, I've kind of tried to get away from that and just push through some of the discomfort that anxiety, when that anxiety comes up around like communicating, And so I would say for us, we really have, really worked on like, let's create these rules and let's be committed to those rules, And it's, again, it's, we're not perfect at it, but I think that we definitely do try. So.
Yeah, I like the fighting fair. I think that's such a good thing to kind of implement because, I think that it's naive to think that when you're in a partnership, whether it's, you're dating, you are committed to each other, or you're in a marriage, you're going to have times where there's disagreement. There's going to be some
Yeah.
type of conflict, right? And I think like how you handle that conflict is so important, right? Because that can then again help build that relationship to, again, now you have these new tools that you can then implement in the future. Or it could be the straw that breaks the camel's back where you feel like this relationship is not something you want to further invest in, right? So fighting fair is definitely good because not only does it teach you to fight fair with your partner, but who you're trying to build something with, but also fighting fair with others, right? And in a friendship, you want to know how to fight fair because again,
Yeah.
we're not, these people who act like we did not have these experiences and just live lives before these individuals came into our lives, right? So we're bringing in this prior life into this new situation, and so we just need to know how do we then merge those paths, right? And fighting fair is such a good tool to have because what is their tolerance level, what is their lines and their boundaries that you can't cross, right? How do you need to be handled, right?
Right.
What's a trigger for you? Again, like, having prior trauma experience, it could be that a raised voice literally puts me in the danger zone, right? And that is
Right.
something for me. If a man threatens me or raises his voice, I immediately feel like my safety is in question. And I'm not going to be responding in a logical manner. I'm going to be in that fight or flight, right? So,
Right.
Having that information of what my triggers are going to be able to help me and my partner have important dialogue in a safe enough space where we can have that dialogue and we can, figure out what that looks like for us, but where we're not so shut down of this is not safe. I don't want to be here. Like I need to get out of this situation because then, like you said, like nothing has been resolved and it just festers and it builds. And so, like I think that that's really important. I'm glad you brought that up, and I'm glad you guys have learned to implement that in your relationship. Because, like I said, I think it's naive to be like, "Oh, our relationship is perfect." Girl, ain't nobody's. Michelle and Barack Obama be fighting, okay?
Girl, she said she liked that man for 10 years. Girl, what?
So,
Like, didn't like him.
I
Whew.
try not to look at other people's relationship like, oh, couples goals, but I'm just saying like everyone, even the people that have been married for 20, 40, 50 years, there has been times when, believe me, they was looking at each other like, is this worth it? Like, do I really want to go down this path? So I think that it's important to have that information of, how can we resolve conflict, but not be so naive that it say like, oh, it's not going to happen. Because that's a lie.
Right.
I don't care
That's a lie.
who you are, unless you married to Jesus.
Right.
you're gonna come across some type of conflict within your relationship. So
Yeah. For sure.
Share your thoughts on the role of rituals and shared experiences in maintaining a strong romantic bond, and what practices or traditions have brought you closer. So I'm gonna let you answer that.
So I definitely think that it's important to have shared experiences. I think we talked earlier about like I think I talked earlier about like wanting, my husband to have like experiences, with me, but also outside of me. But it's definitely important to have shared experiences and rituals. And so, I think that having those experiences bring you closer and they allow you to laugh and reflect. And so we definitely we do that all the time. So, we bond over things that we both like, but I think it's also important to like engage in things that you don't like that your partner likes, you know what I
Mhm.
mean? We do have some similarities, but we have differences too. But I think, somebody, said to me once that like, when it comes to, in heterosexual relationships, when it comes to men and women, we don't really have much in common. And, and my first thought was like, well, I don't have much in common with my 3-year-old son either, but like I love him, you know what I mean? So like
Yeah,
I have to choose to like to play with Legos. I don't like Legos
exactly.
particularly, but
Don't
he
look for
does.
them.
Yeah, you know what I mean? It's the same thing in your relationship. Like I don't necessarily care for sports, but my husband does, you know what I mean? So I engage, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
And it's nice when there are aspects of sports that do pique my interest, you know what I mean? Like I'm not necessarily a big football fan, but I'm like loving Deion Sanders and him at Colorado, and loving all of the like social and political aspects of him being there. And so we do
Mhm.
talk about that stuff, right? He's not a big football fan, but he loves sports, right? So we get to connect on stuff like that. And so again, I think that the takeaway is not that you all have to be similar, but like if you love someone and you care about them, you have to take some initiative to care about those interests that they have, right? So my
Mhm.
husband's a big music buff, like loves music, DJ Herb,
Yeah.
um, loves concerts, loves all that stuff. And so when we first got together, I wasn't really I was into music for sure, but I wasn't really a big concert person. But
Mhm.
like I like that we get to enjoy that. That's something that he enjoys, and we get to, we've gone to concerts, we've got to have those experiences. And because he's literally gone to concerts since he was a little kid, like probably 7 or 8 years old, him and Mercy are
Mhm.
going to concerts, MC Hammer and Public Enemy, like going to these like, and so that's his thing, right? He's so he can rattle off 20, 30 plus concerts that he's gone to. Like that's amazing to me. So like I'm so invested in like having a part of that, getting to share some of that with him because that's his thing.
Mhm.
And so, and because I am definitely someone who likes the social and political aspects of certain things, that's not his thing at all. But he'll indulge me a little bit, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? If something comes up, like, he'll definitely indulge me. We'll have those kind of conversations. I just think that it's important to realize that you're not going to have similarities. However, you can definitely have experiences with each other, and the goal is that, you don't have to like what they like, but when you love somebody and when you care for somebody, you want to kind of, be a part of their world a little bit, you know what I
Mhm.
mean? And it doesn't mean you have to like, again, I'm not a sports person. I'm never going to be a sports person, but I will definitely indulge a little bit, because that's something that he likes. And so, but I also think, we also like social stuff, right? So we try to like have people over, when stuff is going on in the city, we try to like get out, and we like day drinking. That's like one of our things. We do that often. So while we do have things that we have differences and we indulge each other, we also have things that we like and that we enjoy that we'll do together. And so I just, I think that all in all, it's important to, indulge your partner, and they indulge you, and that you kind of find things that you like together and make those things part of your rituals of intimacy. I mean,
Mhm.
romance is great, and I think the romance definitely changes, over the course of, some years, right?
Yeah.
That it's not the kind of romance that you had in the beginning. And I'm not gonna lie, like that romance was great, but if you're not realistic, you can definitely think that something's wrong with your relationship if you don't
Yeah.
have that level of like intense romance. It's like it's not like that in real life.
No.
Like in real life, you know what I mean? What I think is more meaningful in terms of shared experiences and just having those moments of like, you know, you know, to me, intimacy is so much more important than the romantic stuff. You know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I like the romantic stuff, and at times it is nice. But you know, intimacy to me is like, you heard me say that I've not had a massage in a while, and you went and got me like a gift certificate to get a massage, or like,
Mm-hmm.
you know that I like, this author's going to be in town, and you got us tickets to go see this author. Like, stuff like that to me is romantic. It doesn't have to be this like intense, like lovey dovey. And don't get me wrong, like that stuff is good, but
Yeah.
it's not realistic over the course of some decades. You know what I mean? Like, me and my husband's been together. We've been married for 6 years and been together for 12. Like, that's a long time to be with somebody.
Mm-hmm.
I love him, don't get me wrong, and I'm in love with him, but it's not, the love changes, when you have like years invested. It's not that like, lovey dovey, intense, like I can't live without you kind of like love. It's not like that, you
No,
know.
at
And
all.
it's not, and that's not a bad thing, you know what I mean? Like, I think that if your love doesn't evolve from that, I would probably question it a little bit, because I don't think that your love should stay there. I think that it has to change,
Yeah.
And so for me, that's definitely what, our shared rituals and experiences look like. What
Yeah.
about you?
I would say, like, me and him are into TV shows, and so,
Hmm.
I know,
I
like,
forgot that, because we are too. I
yeah,
forgot that.
yeah, because we'll share stuff with you guys that we
Yeah,
watched, and you guys
yeah.
will share stuff. So my husband, I know when football season comes up, he is going to be a owner of a team, right?
Not an owner.
He's the owner. He is the owner of some teams. So I know that Saturdays, Sundays, and Mondays are no
Hmm.
longer, a part of the equation, right? I know this.
Yeah.
Mostly Sundays, he always says,
Right. Yeah.
Sunday I'm off duty. He got
Not
his
I'm off duty.
he got his rosters. He's checking on his, making sure his team people are happy, and injured reports, and he's the
Right.
owner. So I know that. I know that. I accept it. I don't like
Right.
football. I'm not into
Right.
it. But I will sit with him while he watches his little stupid games. I'll be on my iPad.
And that's
You
stupid gay.
know, I'll try to make it, enjoyable for him.
Yeah.
Football, when it comes to the Super Bowl, I know he likes the Super Bowl. I don't care about the Super Bowl. I care about the commercials and halftime. But I'll make,
Hmm.
a little platter, give him some snacks and stuff to make sure he's
Yeah.
having a good time and whatever. I try to keep
Hmm.
the kids at bay, the dogs at bay. So, that's
Hmm.
that's a ritual that we have implemented. He knows, for me, I like my lawyer and law shows, and I
Hmm.
like my supernatural shows and
Hmm.
my Viking shows. I'm a mixture of TV shows. And when I
Yeah.
start watching a show, a lot of times I'll go back to watch older shows, and I'll like binge
Hmm.
watch them. He hates that, but I don't care. I do it. And so he supports me in it. He'll sit, sometimes he'll just sit there and just hang out with me and let me watch
Hmm.
my shows. He has no care about them. Right now I'm watching Suits, and he does not care about it.
Oh, Irby's watching that now too, girl. I think
Yeah.
you I think you put him onto that.
Yeah, watching Suits, really like it. And he doesn't care about it. He doesn't have any interest, but he will just come and just be with me. I'm watching Wheel of
Hmm.
Time as well.
Hmm.
He don't care about it, but he'll sit with me. And now it's funny
Yeah.
because now our kids do that as well. So they will come and sit with us if we're watching something. I also like scary
Hmm.
movies. Mercy is not into
Ooh.
scary movies. He always says, "You watching these spirits." Um, but he'll sit with me. I have to watch it during the day with him, but he'll watch it with me. He will partake in things with me. The other thing that
Hmm.
a ritual that we have implemented is, Mercy is not a dog person. When I
Hmm.
came, I moved from Florida. I told him I had a dog. He met him, Dash. Um, and I said, either you fully accept Dash, Dash have full run of the house. I don't put my dogs in cages. So I said, Dash sleeps in my bed. Dash sits on the couch. Dash does
Yeah.
whatever the hell he wants to do. You either accept that or he's not coming, like, and I'm not coming. Mercy
Right.
was, oh yeah, we could bring the dog, but he had rules. Mercy, literally them rules went out the window. Mercy would take Dash on
Yeah.
walks. He would be coming up with songs, buying him treats. Like, he loved him.
Aw.
He loved him. He would
Yeah.
tell people that's my son, like, taking
Yeah.
pictures of him and stuff. When he would be out of town, he'd be like, FaceTime me so he could see my son, and then
Oh, that's sweet.
he loved him. And then Dash passed
Mhm.
away, which was really hard for us both. And,
Yeah.
he was depressed, I was depressed. And then I said, I got to get out of this funk. He said, well, what do you need? I said, I need another dog. And I said, can I have two? And he was like, I don't know. But then I showed him the pictures and he said, okay. He fusses even to this day. I mean, earlier this morning he was
Yeah.
fussing about him. But he loves those dogs. He does. He'll wake up in the middle of the night, take them out. He comes up with songs and stuff. So, like, that's a ritual we have
Oh.
now too. Is like, I'm a dog person. I'm always going to be a dog person. If I could have more dogs, I would. Um, they're a little bit expensive and time consuming. Mercy told me if I get another
Mhm.
dog, he's leaving me.
Oh.
I try to show him dogs all the time, and he's like, no.
He probably was like,
But
"Girl, if you don't get out of
that's
here."
girl all the time. But like that's our ritual. And then like even like we do family game nights with the kids, and we're implement
Mm.
that, and him helping me cook. If he wants something, a specific dish, I'll say, okay, I'll make it. Can you mix up the chicken? Because I like my nails long. So if I don't have my
Mhm.
gloves, he'll mix up the chicken for me. So I think it's just like those little things, and as we grow, we implement other rituals. So like we now
Mhm.
have gingerbread house with
Yeah,
his
we
his
do.
dad and his
Mhm.
his bonus mom. And so we
Mhm.
did that last year, and we are already planning on this year, and we're excited for
I
that.
bet.
And then Hershey was something that we kind of came up with
Mhm.
my mom, and we have been implementing that, as a ritual as well. So, you know, one of the things that we have changed is before we had the kiddos, me and Mercy used to be going out to eat all the time. Like we would go, date night all the time, go to different restaurants, really fun, trying different drinks. Now that we got these kids, we don't do that as much. But
Yeah.
we have kind of like changed that a little bit. We're not going out. And then also COVID definitely played a major role in us
Yeah.
going out and about, just being like fearful of, getting COVID and things like that. So
Mhm.
we have kind of changed that a little bit where now we go onto TikTok and we will find recipes and then we make them like at the house.
Oh,
And so
cool.
like
Okay.
that has been fun. He made these sliders the other day and they were really good. And I found like different Spanish restaurant like recipes and stuff, sweets and stuff like that. And so like we'll send each other like, oh, you see this recipe, like, what about this? And so that's fun, and that's a ritual that we have now implemented. So I think it's just like, I think it's just growing together and
Mhm.
trying to figure out like what works for us, what doesn't work, how we are showing that we're invested in each other, even when, like you said, I'm not a sports person, but, you know, he has said like, oh, I want to go to a basketball game. I'm not into it, whatever. But, I've been to an NBA game with him because that's something he likes to
Mhm.
do, you know
Mhm.
just like I have my little quirky things that I like to do, and he's supportive of it. So, I think
Mhm.
it's just one of those things where we are invested in each other, and trying to figure out what we look like together and what we look like individually and how we can support that.
Mhm.
But
Absolutely. Yeah.
that's something we do.
Mhm.
Well, I
All
think that
right.
is all the questions. I think this was a good episode. I think that
I do too.
we were able to dive into who we are individually, but also as a partner. And I think one of
Mhm.
the takeaways for me for this episode is to really just have people think about, you know, when you are in a romantic partnership, whether it be with a man, a woman, whatever, it's really important for you not to forget who you are, but also it's
Mhm.
important for you to remember that that individual is not your property and you want to figure out how you can grow with them, and
Mhm.
realizing that they were an individual before they came into the partnership and they're going to be an individual even within that partnership. And just like don't stop being reflective and trying to figure out things that are working within your relationship and are not working within your relationship. Don't be so, confined to certain ideas and beliefs, especially external people giving you what should be going on in your relationship.
Mhm.
Because it's your relationship. You have to figure out what works best for you and your partner, and
Right.
what that's going to look like for you guys. And other people, external people are going to have their inputs and things like that. But at the end of the day, it really matters how you and your partner feel. And if you guys are happy with it and you're not hurting, like I said, as long as you ain't hurting kids, animals, or other humans, do your thing.
Pretty much. Yeah. I like the takeaway about possession, right? I saw a clip that Lauren London was doing an interview, I think, with Angie Martinez, and she said something about that. She obviously she lost her partner to gun violence, and she said, like, when you are loving somebody through ego, you are loving them through thinking that they're yours and that you possess them and you own them. But like when you're loving them through just wanting them to be happy and wanting to be a part of the season that you're in with them, like it's a little bit different. And I think that's a really good takeaway. I think the other takeaway too is like don't be afraid to spice it up and change things. Like it for me, I've been, with my partner for 12 years. Like I'm not the person that I was 12 years ago, and the things that I even thought I wanted in a relationship are just different now, and not being afraid to say that, not being afraid to say like, I did like that, 12 years ago, but like, at year 8, I don't really want that,
Not
like
on
I
that
don't think that
vibe.
that serves me. Right.
Yeah.
And not being afraid of like the conflict that could come from that. Right. Because what I have learned is that and we're going to talk about, friendships too, but one of the things that I've definitely struggled with is like the fear of conflict, right? And seeing conflict as like a dirty word, right? Like running as fast as you can when it comes to conflict. And like what I've learned, through my relationship, through my marriage, is that like conflict can be transformative though, and it can be transformational, and it can, create conversations in your relationship that you haven't had before because you were so afraid of what that conflict could turn into, and you assume that it is going to always be negative. And it can be negative, but it could definitely turn into something transformational, right? Where maybe you didn't necessarily consider something, or you learned something new because you had this conversation, and now you're like, okay, let's make these changes, right? So I just think don't be afraid to grow and change, and don't, somebody older in a relationship who's been married for 40 years, I respect them so much. But she said it's all in how you started out. And I used to believe that. And then I said, if you've been married for 40 years, it can't always be how you started out because
No.
40 years ago, the things that you wanted, you don't want now. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So it can't be how it's all about how you started out. It's all about being open that the way you started out may not always be the way you end, right? It may
Exactly.
not be the way your relationship evolves, and you have to just be open to that. So that's the takeaway for me, is just be open to like something new.
Yeah, I like that. And think about it like a house, right? Like you bought a
Mhm.
house, and at some point in time, you're going to have to do some type of upgrades within that home, right? The
Mhm.
foundation is not going to be as sturdy as it used to be. Your roof is going to need repair. Think of your romantic partnership as a house. Like you have to invest in it. If you don't invest in it, at some
Mhm.
point in time, it's going to start falling apart, right? So, like, you want to be investing in it. You want to be figuring out what works, what doesn't work, what has been here for a long time and maybe needs to be reevaluated. Maybe your water tank or your water heater
Mhm.
is not heating like it used to, right? That doesn't
Mhm.
mean that you just go and sell the house. It means that maybe you need to look into getting that, evaluated to see if you need to do
Mhm.
some maintenance on it. Or maybe you have to
Mhm.
replace the water heater, but you don't throw the whole house away because the water heater is just acting funky. You have
Right.
to just like do some reflecting, figure out what is working, what isn't, and just be willing to invest reinvest in your
Yeah,
house, reinvest in that structure, and just making sure that it continues to be great. And I think
absolutely.
that is the main takeaway from this episode.
hmm
So,
I was gonna say, for those of you who are looking for resources, the Gottman Institute has tons and tons, 40 years of research
really
on
good,
marriage,
really good.
relationships. They have done lots of research, not just on heterosexual relations, but they also have done research on gay and LGBTQ relationships. So if you're looking for ways to improve your relationships and you're looking for ways to improve your communication, they have lots of free resources. They have a podcast. I don't know if they're doing new episodes, but they have like a podcast they were releasing every day, like a 5-minute podcast just on some tip, to add to your relationship. I listen to another podcast from time to time called the Marriage Therapy Radio. They have had some really great topics on there. So if you're looking for some resources, books, even like anything by the Gottman Institute, you can't go wrong, right?
No.
So those would be some resources that I would just throw out there just off the top of my head. And maybe throughout the week, once we release everything, I can definitely look for some more and add them to some of our clips. But those would be the places that I would start.
Yeah, and it's evidence-based, right? It's not just where they're
Yes.
just throwing
Yeah.
out information. It's evidence-based, which is really important. And I think, again, something you should take into consideration. And I'm not saying that, you shouldn't listen to people who have been down this road, who have years
Mhm.
of being married. I think you should take into consideration that, but also think of it like social media. A lot of people post the happy, pretty pictures that they have edited and all these other things, and they don't really give you the full on view of what it took to get there. And so, like,
Right.
if someone is giving you marital advice or relationship advice or whatever, see if they're being fully transparent and giving you that full background knowledge, and just
Mhm.
telling you like the good, the bad, the ups, the downs. They're not just telling you like, oh, you should do this, and they're not sharing their actual journey with you. Just be
Mhm.
cautious about that. I think that that's important when we are getting, you know, feedback from other people. We really want to hear like, you're saying like, oh, be cautious of this. Well, why are you saying that? Like, what was your experience? How did you
Right.
overcome this? If you dealt with infertility, what are you doing? Like, how did you go from there? Because sometimes people will say, like, oh, if I were you, I would, get out of that relationship. If someone cheats on me, I'm out of it. That might not be your path. That might not be your
Mhm.
belief. Or maybe you started off feeling that way and then you got into a relationship and something, happened. And there's different levels, right? There's different levels of this.
Mhm.
And maybe where you thought you would respond in one way, you now have changed that, right? And
Right.
other people on the outside don't fully understand. Maybe it's not their journey to understand. Like, maybe that's just
Mhm.
something for you and your partner to figure it out. But like, you have to just kind of take things with a grain of salt, and kind of look at, where is this coming from, and are they sharing the full story with you and not just the
Mhm.
highlights, right? Because a highlight can make anything look good,
Oh yeah, that's the point, right?
right? Like, I'm
Right.
not showing you after that play I got injured, like I got the hell
Right.
snapped out of me. I'm just showing you what it looked
Right.
like from when I caught the ball, right? Oh, did a good catch.
Right.
But like, just kind of think about that a little bit, and try to figure out how you can, apply it to your situation. I think that that's important.
For sure. Yeah, I agree. I agree.
Well, Tom, I am glad that we had this discussion. Let's kick it off
Same.
to what we always do at the end. What is one way you are going to soar this next coming weeks?
Yeah, so I am gonna soar by, like I said earlier, I'm kind of been in my parenting bag, so I'm gonna want to finish this book. It's gonna be a long book, so I don't know if I'll finish it in 2 weeks, but I definitely want to keep reading it again. It's been really insightful so far, so I do want to do that. And then because, you know for the business, I have joined TikTok, so I am trying to navigate what it means to be a TikTok therapist. So that has been a bit of a interesting couple of days, just trying to figure that out. But I definitely want to post more and just find ways to make the most of putting out some really good, useful, accurate, information about some of the things that I'm passionate about: anxiety, trauma, Black women, relationships, all that type of stuff. So I'm definitely trying to, utilize it and navigate through that. So those are probably going to be the couple of ways that I want to soar. There's a few like like trainings on like how to use social media a little bit. So I think I do want to kind of spruce up on that in the next couple of weeks. So those would be the ways that I will be soaring. What about you?
I like that. I will be finishing off my next 2 weeks with my current position and, making
Mhm.
sure I wrap up that and making sure I leave them with, good work, but also good resources that they can utilize even when I'm no longer in that role. And then I will
Mhm.
be going to my very intimate vow renewal uh,
Yes.
that I'm
Can't
looking
wait.
forward to. I cannot wait to see everyone and
Mhm.
just like have good vibes and just really, live in the moment. I'm excited about that.
Mhm.
And then Brian has his first soccer game this week, so I'm excited about
Oh,
that.
okay.
My other nephew, Braden, he actually asked us to join his band in his school. He's thinking about playing the saxophone, so pray for me. I'm
Nice.
like, he says that he likes jazz music, so we're going to support him in that. And Carmen is getting ready for homecoming. So in
Ooh,
October.
that's
So
right.
all of these things I'm looking forward to, as well as starting my new position with my new organization in October as
Mhm.
well. So I'm excited. And then submitting my finalized third time the
Yes.
charm hours to go ahead and get approval for the LCSW. And then getting that
Mhm.
approval and passing that test and
Mhm.
then figuring out what my next goal is. So that is how I am choosing to soar.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thank you all for being here with us today and listening to our relationship series. If you haven't, please like and subscribe on YouTube or anywhere where you get podcasts. And leave some reviews, on on those platforms and on our social media pages. We definitely have been really committed to posting some clips and just kind of giving people, a taste of what the podcast series has been. And so don't forget to do that. We truly, truly appreciate it. This has been a really good journey for us so far. So we're really excited of the work that we've been, putting into this. And we really, really appreciate all the support that we get, and honestly the content that we're putting together. We just are really proud of it. So, you know, continue to follow us and connect with us. We really appreciate it.
Yes, yes. And please, if you have any type of feedback in regards to what future episodes you would like us to kind of talk about and unpack, we'd really appreciate it. Like I said, our next episode for the relationship series will be on friendships, which will be a fun one.
Hmm.
If you have some
Yeah.
questions that you want us to cover, please, reach out to us. We would love to add those questions into the mix. If there is
Hmm.
another type of relationship that you would like us to discuss and unpack, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. But until next time, just
Hmm.
tune in. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll continue to roll out episodes bi weekly.
Absolutely.
Have a good day.